Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the TomaTalk podcast. This is your boy Kaz, and today I'm going to talk to you about a video that I saw shared on Facebook called "Are the Police Racist?" Now, before we get into this video, I want to provide some background into the source of it. This video is produced by an organization called Prager University. This university is not actually a university, nor is it a scholastic entity, even in the slightest way, and you can see this on their website yourself. As I watched the video in review, I wondered just how seriously they took the name of university when they made this website, Prager University. Even without accreditation, they could still be an educational source as long as they presented scholarly information in a scholarly way. And I doubted it, so I went and looked for a link to the references in the video, and I couldn't find it. So I went to the website and I found the course, and still no works cited on the actual Prager University website. I was like, is this a course, right? Courses have materials, but there was none available. And I considered that perhaps they were withholding the materials from the general public, so you would have to join. So I did. I joined the Prager University. I joined, but still no further details beyond the video itself about where this information came from. And I was like, how scholastic is this? So I did some more poking around on their website, and in their mission statement, they lay claim to the title of Permanent Arbiters of American Ideology. And what I mean by this is in their mission statement, they say, our 5-minute videos are conservative sound bites that clarify profoundly significant and uniquely American concepts. So their concepts are the ones that are uniquely American. In their vision statement, they say, we help millions of people understand the fundamental values that shape America and provide them with the intellectual ammunition they need to defend and spread those values. So, again, they're laying claim to being the sole arbiters of American ideology. And that's a very nice vision, defending the American values exclusively. So they're the only ones that can defend American values. And if you don't agree with them, then you're just not an American, right? In their About Us section, they finally admit that they are Judeo-Christian at their core and include concepts of freedom of speech, free press, free markets, and a strong military to protect and project those values. So here we see more Christian bias. These fucking Christians, the incumbent scourge of the past few centuries, Christian religion. So, oh yeah, look, on their website it says Adam Carolla did a video for them. Whenever I have a difficult decision to make in my life, I look at my "What would Adam Carolla do" bracelet. Fucker. Dennis Prager himself, very. It says he studied at a couple of colleges. He graduated with a minor from this one college, and then he studied at a whole bunch of other colleges. It doesn't say exactly what degree he got, and I'm not sure if he ever got any. He did a lot of books and a lot of talk shows. One of his most recent book, evidently, is called "The Ten Commandments: Still the Best Moral Code." This is a code that, at no time, tried to rebuke the practices of slavery or rape or child bride taking because it was too busy demanding that you take 1/7 of your life doing absolutely fucking nothing to pay respect to Yahweh, their God. So that's the best moral code that God could come up with. Fucking great. So I went up and down their website looking for a writer or an author or some kind of works cited or some kind of references to the source material of their videos. I could not find one. For all I know, these videos could have been handwritten by Dennis Prager himself. What's more likely is that this particular video was written entirely by Heather MacDonald, who has her own book for sale on Amazon.com right now. You can get it for $10.95 or something like that. You can go look it up if you want it, and go ahead and feel free to read her book if you feel like it. I'm not going to give her my money. I went through the video and found hints to their resources, and I'll present those in the description below.
Does the truth matter? Not to groups like Black Lives Matter. That's tragic for many reasons, not the least of which is that Black lives are being lost as a result.
So I'm not going to try to deny that she might have a point here. I cannot refute it. Black Lives Matter social justice warrior organizations and groups, they're suffering from tunnel vision. It's a condition typical in human beings fighting for their beliefs. Social justice warriors and Black Lives Matter truly believe these things that they say because it's so deeply ingrained in them to believe these things. And to certain degrees, they're right. And the conservatives, they don't admit that. Not readily, anyways. But we'll get into that soon enough. They fight for their beliefs. The problem with that idea is beliefs aren't really worth fighting for, and this is a common misconception. Everybody believes that belief should be respected and fought for. No, that's just not true. Facts are worth fighting for. We should fight for fact. As a society, as a culture, as a species, we should all be fighting to gain knowledge. More fucking facts is what the game is all about. So what is my point? My point is the lines that divide us, black people from white people, whatever arbitrary demographic you want to assign to us, classify us in, it's all bullshit. Unless you're siblings and twins, the likelihood of two people having the same skin tone, ridiculous. We are all a variety. We're on a spectrum of brown, all of us. From the palest white to the richest black people, all of us are just varied shades of brown people. We drew these lines in the sand and forced ourselves into these classifications a long time ago. And the only reason why these lines exist is because they're in our minds. All of our minds. And the way these lines of latitude and longitude are on a globe, those don't really exist in reality. We drew them on a facsimile of the earth. And only there does it exist. Just like the lines that divide between race and white and Hispanic and all this other shit, we put them there. We drew the borders around the countries. We made all of it.
When it comes to the subject of American police, blacks, and the deadly use of force, here is what we know. A recent deadly force study by Washington State University researcher Lois James found that police officers were less likely to shoot unarmed black suspects than unarmed white or Hispanic ones in simulated threat scenarios.
Okay, so let's talk about this study done by Lois James at the Washington State University. This is a very interesting study to mention. This study found that police officers were less likely to use deadly force on black people because they're black people. It found that the reason an officer is more hesitant to shoot black suspects is because the police are afraid of being called racists. It's because the police are afraid of being called racists. They don't want to be that cop who shot the black guy. The video fails to mention this at all. I mean, it's like it's not even a consideration. The truth matter, I mean, this same exact study also found that these same cops showed significant signs of racial bias, but these cops who were less likely to shoot black people were still very racially biased against blacks. This exact same study that said what she just said also said that, but they didn't mention that. The video is titled, "Are Cops Racists?" It's not titled, "Do cops shoot black people more or less," or blah blah blah. They didn't think about that, did they? If you actually read the study, and let me just quote it, it says they gave these officers a Harvard implicit association test designed to detect racial bias by linking pictures of black and white faces with pictures of weapons. Perhaps stunningly, 96% of the nearly all white officers demonstrated implicit racial bias, with 78% strongly or moderately associating blacks with weapons and 0% associating whites with weapons. 0% associating whites with weapons. So that's the baseline test group for this study. And this was the one that Lois James did. And this little quotation here comes from the Nursing Communications Office at Washington State University, where Miss Lois James worked and published this study. The flaw in acknowledging the results of this study is that the officers were in a lab simulation. Regardless of the stimuli that they used in simulating these scenarios, all of these cops knew for a fact that their lives were not in danger while this study took place. In real life, in the street, police risk their actual lives. People really do kill cops, and cops know that. The fight or flight response is a determining factor in the actions of the police officer. Their training and education can only curb their sympathetic nervous system's influence on their behavior, but only so much.
Harvard economics professor Roland analyzed more than 1,000 officer-involved shootings across the country. He concluded that there is zero evidence of racial bias in police shootings. In Houston, he found that blacks were 24% less likely than whites to be shot by officers, even though the suspects were armed or violent.
So does the truth matter, Miss Heather McDonald or Dennis Prager, or whoever's involved in the making of this video? Let's look at the study itself. I mean, Roland himself said, prejudice in law enforcement is real and harmful in many ways, causing cynicism and disillusionment, especially among boys of color. Let's look through this study and see what we find. In the raw data, blacks and Hispanics are approximately 2% points more likely than whites to report any use of force in a police interaction. The white mean is 0.8%. Thus, the odds ratio is 3.335 for black and 2.584 for Hispanics. As the use of force increases, the racial difference remains roughly constant, adding controls for civilian demographics, civilian behavior, contact, and officer characteristics or year does little to alter these results. In this study, they admit that their results have several important caveats. First, all of but one data set was provided by a select group of police departments. It is possible that these departments only supply the data because they are either enlightened or were not concerned about what the analysis would reveal. In essence, this is equivalent to analyzing labor market discrimination on a set of firms willing to supply a researcher with their human resources data. There may be important selection in who was willing to share data. The police public contact survey partially sidesteps this issue by including a nationally representative sample of civilians, but it does not contain data on officer-involved shootings. So, while this study does demonstrate that there is no discrimination evident in police shootings of blacks, it does demonstrate racial bias and the application of non-lethal force on blacks, once again proving our own original premise to be incorrect. Are cops not racist, or aren't they?
Does the truth matter? An analysis of the Washington Post's police shooting database and of federal crime statistics reveals that fully 12% of all whites and Hispanics who die of homicide are killed by cops. By contrast, only 4% of black homicide victims are killed by cops.
This little tidbit of information actually comes from Heather McDonald herself. She describes this information in her book, Are Cops Racists? Now, you can feel free to purchase this book on Amazon, a little over $10 if you're into Kindle editions. I am not going to be paying this person any of my money, so if any of you watching want to, go ahead. But since I can't read the book, I can't find the sources of the statistics, and I searched scholastic databases as well as extensive Google searching, and I don't know where this information came from. Ms. McDonald is omitting it in her presentation, and if she is honestly conveying the findings of this study, as she has done in her previous two references, then let's just assume that it is a correct statistic, just for the sake of argument. Why does she group whites and Hispanics together? I don't know why this study did that. As we should know, Hispanics is not a race. In fact, in several legal contexts, Hispanics are considered white in America. Um, so there we have these two traditionally separate demographics being lumped into one arbitrarily, um, just to make whites look better, I guess. She doesn't break these two down, so we have no idea if it's the whites or the Hispanics being shot by police more than the other. So, fan-fucking-tastic. Thank you, Heather McDonald. And by the way, speaking of federal crime statistics on the subject of police shootings, I just want to mention that FBI Director James Comey has described the lack of data on this subject embarrassing and ridiculous. So, these judgments that she's making based on all this data, little suspect, don't you think?
But isn't it a sign of bias that blacks make up 26% of police shooting victims, but only 13% of the national population? It is not, and common sense suggests why. Police shootings occur more frequently where officers confront armed or violently resisting suspects. Those suspects are disproportionately black.
So I can't necessarily refute this little argument here. I can't offer any criticism or contention to it, and it might be true. It's likely to be true. But is that really the question that we're asking here? Again, the name of this video is Are Cops Racists? Not Do Cops Kill Black People Unfairly?
According to the most recent study by the Department of Justice, although blacks were only about 15% of the population in the 75 largest counties in the U.S., they were charged with 62% of all robberies, 57% of murders, and 45% of assaults. In New York City, blacks commit over 3/4 of all shootings, though they are only 23% of the city's population. Whites, by contrast, commit under 2% of all shootings in the city, though they are 34% of the population. New York's crime disparities are repeated in virtually every racially diverse city in America. The real problem facing inner-city black communities today is not the police, but criminals.
Yes, criminals are the larger, more immediate threat to black lives today. No question. Now answer me this. If you have a family of 10 people and you kill 7, and then I kill 1, there are 2 left. Which one of us is innocent? Oh, that's right. Neither of us. Look, my point is not that police should never, under any circumstances, shoot a black person, and nor is it that shooting of blacks in America is necessarily racist. My point is that black on black murder argument is immaterial to the argument of police on black racially motivated contacts. The question you asked at the beginning of this video, the name of this video, once again, is Are Cops Racists? The name of this video is not how many black people kill other black people. 2 different issues.
In 2014, over 6,000 blacks were murdered, more than all white and Hispanic homicide victims combined. Who is killing them? Not the police and not white civilians, but other blacks. In fact, a police officer is 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a black male than an unarmed black male is to be killed by a police officer. If the police ended all use of lethal force tomorrow, it would have a negligible impact on the black death by homicide rate.
Wow. Okay, so all of that information that you just heard is completely irrelevant. Each of us has 100% chance of death. 100%. We're all going to die. When you take a job as a policeman, a fireman, or a military service member, a contractor, or a host of other professions, you dramatically increase your chances of being killed. That is the frequency with which blacks kill police could not absolve the police of unjustified killings. It never ever could. Then in the next sentence she states, even if we stopped killing people tomorrow, it wouldn't have that big of an impact on the number of people killed. Excuse me? What sort of monster takes such a stance? Preservation of life is one of the main objectives of policing, isn't it? Who cares if the impact is huge or small? Let's make some kind of impact for everyone's sake. Seriously? That's the argument you're going to make?
In Chicago, through just the first 6.5 months of 2016, over 2,300 people were shot. That's a shooting an hour during some weekends. The vast majority of the victims were Black. During this same period, the Chicago police shot 12 people, all armed and dangerous. That's 0.5% of all shootings.
Good job, Chicago police, killing so few of the total people killed, I guess. What? I mean,
Does the truth matter? If it does, here's a truth worth pondering. There is no government agency more dedicated to the proposition that Black lives matter than the police. The proactive policing revolution that began in the mid-1990s has dramatically brought down the inner city murder rate and saved tens of thousands of Black lives. Unfortunately, that crime decline is now in jeopardy.
very well, Miss Heather McDonald, but at what expense? How many American citizens have had their constitutional rights ignored or encroached upon in this push to drive down a single? Could there have, and is there yet, another approach to reduce the inner city crime rate not yet conceived or enacted? I just love how the right, they love to say that Obama is overstepping his constitutional bounds with his use of executive orders, but the police, who are also an executive entity, are given carte blanche, impunity, all the benefits of the doubt, as long as there is a Black man on the wrong end of that gun. But perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps there are right-wing conservatives out there who recognize that racial bias is indeed an issue, because that's what the first two studies that this woman here presented actually said. Those two studies that she thought proved that that cops are not racist, they actually explicitly said that their studies found implicit bias in police officers.
As I write in my book, The War on Cops, police officers are backing off of proactive policing in Black neighborhoods thanks to the false narrative that police officers are infected with homicidal bias. As a result, violent crime is going up. In cities with large Black populations, homicides in 2015 rose anywhere from 54% in Washington, D.C. to 90% in Cleveland. Overall, in the nation's 56 largest cities, homicides in 2015 rose 17%, a nearly unprecedented one-year spike.
The Ferguson effect. A hotly debated idea, unsubstantiated by research. Causal links have not been demonstrated. This is a hypothesis, and she presents it here as fact. So here's some science for you. Right now, there's a study being published in the American Sociological Review. It's called The Police Violence and Citizen Crime Reporting in the Black Community. This was a study done of the hypothesis, the Ferguson effect. And what did they find? It's not that the cops are backing off this aggressive policing methodology. It's that people aren't calling the cops, because nobody wants to survive a robbery and then be killed by the cops that they called for help. Even if this narrative is false about police being racist against Blacks, it's so deeply entrenched in the ghetto culture, and it will take a lot more than this course to change it.
Many law-abiding residents of high-crime areas beg the police to maintain order. Precisely the type of policing that the ACLU, progressive politicians, and the Obama Justice Department denounce as racist. This is tragic because when the police refrain from proactive policing, Black lives are lost. Lost because of a myth. The best research and data reach this conclusion. There is no evidence that police are killing Blacks just because they're Black. You now have the truth. Does it matter? I'm Heather McDonald of the Manhattan Institute for Prager University.
To subscribe to our YouTube channel, click here. To help keep our videos free, donate here.
So in her final summation, she does not address her initial thesis. Thesis is, are cops racist? It's not, do they kill blacks just because they're blacks? Okay, so the media is spinning a false narrative. Then talk about that. You can talk about that. That's fine. That's perfectly valid. So are we really just going to pretend that none of these police shootings are racially motivated? Are we really just going to pretend that there isn't evidence of racial bias in police towards blacks? Because that's exactly what the first two studies that Heather McDonald presented in this video said. I'm not going to say it again. It doesn't always, and not even usually, end in death. Police encounters with black people. People get pulled over and questioned or arrested by police simply for being black every day, all over this country, and that's a fact. Is it so difficult to just say to yourself before you stop someone, do I have a good reason to suspect this person beyond the color of their skin? I mean, let's just give you the position that blacks aren't shot disproportionately by police. Fine. This solves nothing. You can shut up the retards at Black Lives Matter who don't even know what they're protesting, but you're not going to pull the wool over my eyes just because you have some fancy graphics and a well-spoken speaker. Even intelligent people are wrong sometimes. We all have racism within us, and you know what? That's okay. We all have homicidal instincts, rape instincts. All of us are animals at our core, but thanks to our prefrontal cortex, we don't have to be slaves to it. We have two problems to address here. Lower income neighborhoods have more crime and more violent death. We have another problem, racism in the police. All people are racist, in my opinion. I don't hold it against any of you as long as you don't allow your prejudices to stop you from evaluating information logically. But I really don't think that it's something that we've evolved past quite yet. We still have the vestigial remnants of the herd mentality, the tribal nature of our predecessors, evolutionarily speaking. In criminal proceedings, it's common for prosecution to establish three aspects of a crime to solidify their chances of getting a conviction: means, motive, and opportunity. The difference between everyone else and the police is that the police have the means, the motive, and opportunity to behave unethically at any given time. That's all the logic that you need to determine that police should not be automatically given the benefit of the doubt. We do not need to lower the standards for the police based on the difficulty or danger of their job. No, they must meet we the people's expectations. So enough of this discussion about do black versus all lives matter. Let's just establish clearer guidelines for all police as to when lethal force is or is not authorized, and body cams on every cop at all times. And then let's increase the minimum level of education our police are required to obtain. The more intelligence directly correlates with less racial bias. So let's teach the youth how to interact with authorities. And let's forge a culture of solid family foundations for all people so that we can reduce the number of children growing up unsupervised in the streets, destined for a bullet or a cell. Anyways, I'm Kaz. See y'all later.